We have no use for anarchy and violence and destruction of property and loss of life. Wale ambao wanasponsor hiyo violence, sisi tunawajua. And I want to call out those who are behind the anarchy in Kenya, those who are behind the sponsoring the chaos in the Republic of Kenya. Shame on them, because they are sponsoring violence against our democratic nation. Mimi nataka niulize watu wa Ford Foundation, watuambie hiyo pesa wanatoa ifanye fujo ndio wapate faida gani? We are going to call them out and we are going to tell them, if they are not interested in democracy in Kenya, if they are going to sponsor violence, if they are going to sponsor anarchy, we are going to call them out and we are going to tell them they either style up or they leave.
This statement the president made while speaking in Nakuru. And I think I analyzed this video sometime, I think when I was in Kisumu. And there is something I raised, and I said that the current administration, that any responsible government, it will not take them a political rally to just castigate Ford Foundation, rather point out what they feel Ford Foundation is doing, because they have the intelligence and all the machinery to find out what exactly is it. And there the president was asking the organizations like Ford Foundation why they are sponsoring anarchy in the country. But one pertinent question that could not be answered is, how exactly are they doing it? And what is their stake in it? After William Ruto made that claim, I saw a statement by the US Embassy here in the country asking the president on how to fix the country, to fix the nation, and calling for restraint against protesters. And really, they threw their weight behind some of these things that were not going on right in the country. And after that, the PS, Singh, who is in charge of foreign affairs, wrote a letter demanding that Ford Foundation, the founder of Ford Foundation, the New York-based foundation, the audit of civil society organizations that have been receiving funding for their activities for the last 1 year between April 2023 to May 2024. And in a letter that was online, I think you might have seen that letter, they were asking, I read that letter word by word, and the contents of that letter was actually showing that exactly William Ruto and the team are just running a political propaganda, and they're lacking a tangible evidence against the foundation they're accusing. So that foundation responded and said, we have not been sponsoring protest. And if the money has been given, now they've listed 16 organizations in the country that have been receiving funding from Ford Foundation to advance democracy and the good governance programs in the country, which is something that these organizations have been receiving in the past. So even last year, that was last year in April, they received funding from last year in April, even up to now. And it's now only this month that now the protests have happened. Now, where have they been spending the other part of the money, if government is to put that claim? And what has come out exactly is that we don't have concrete evidence against anyone. And I've been looking at the recent, the mobilization, the planning and the mobilization, the protest. It is very difficult to even pinpoint and say so and so is funding. Because, for example, I want us to listen to this Twitter space when this lady was pointing out, when they were pointing out something about the protests.
The spirit of fear is what is being inflicted, because the KDF never worked, and now the goons is coming on board, and the goons are already complaining that they are not being paid. They worked and they were never paid. So if you see things are working towards the goal, then know that the eye is on the prize. So aim at the prize, forget about the narrations that are being spread across, and in Kiswahili they say wanatapaka, to find a reason for everything. But the reason is the poor governance, the reason is the poor leadership. Madge, welcome. The reason is we want change. And that change cannot come from somebody who is already very much compromised. So let's keep our eyes on the prize. It's not a very soft road. It's a very dark road. It's very thick. It's steepy, and we have to walk through it. So I'll give you Tabi, and let's be positive. Let's be 3 minutes each, and let's focus on the topic. Kindly.
Thank you very much. Me, what I wanted to add is that we cannot allow intruders to take over what you have started. Whatever that you started was a good thing. Therefore, we cannot allow intruders, that is the goons, to come and take over the journey that we started. So to me, I think what we can do right now is to try as much as possible to defame Ruto, because he has portrayed himself as an African leader, So if we try and defame him, like carry out a narrative that Ruto is bloodthirsty, Ruto is murdering our kids, Ruto is the goon leader, paint that everywhere, on the streets, on everything that you have on social media. Let us paint him as that way, because that is who he is. So I think that is, and then after painting him, I think he's going to retreat back and say this is now spoiling the name of his name, because he wants to portray himself as, the person who championed for peace, who championed for this and that. So if we paint him as a bloodthirsty, the killer, the leader of goods, he's going to retreat back and, find other means, but not use goods. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabi. Naman.
Thank you very much, everyone. First of all, mad respect to those patriots that have fallen in this cause.
That is social media. Now, in that express, people join randomly. Even the president, even some government officials have ever joined those spaces. That is the tool, the social media tool that is being used, the Twitter and the TikTok and the Facebook, that is being used to mobilize people to come out in their numbers to protest. So, even from the mobilization part of it, I know very well that there have been civil society organizations that have been in the street, and they've been, of course, advancing human rights and calling out government on a number of issues that are not going on right in the country. But it's a bit too casual to point out and say so and so is funding the protest. You cannot pinpoint. And from the tone of that letter, from the contents of that letter, it is very evident that Kenya Kwanza administration, they do not have any tangible evidence against Ford Foundation. In fact, in that letter, there is one demand that they have posted that requested the Ford Foundation, and it seems it's been rejected. I've been trying to talk to some people in the NGO space that are saying, in terms of donor funding, how that is going. They are demanding, they said, the Ford Foundation has been giving 16 NGOs in the country grants for the last 1 year. And so they're asking that Ford Foundation, they're telling them, without evidence, that the money that you've been pumping in the Kenyan NGOs is the money being used to overthrow democratically elected government. So, without evidence, they're not saying, of course, there is non-lobbying policy. When I've ever worked on donor-funded projects, when a donor is giving money for a project, it's normally project-based. So it's project-based. Even as you calculate, you'll calculate the percentage that goes into administration or the operation and what goes to the project. So every donor has an outline on how his money is going to be used. In fact, I may want to ask, and there is something I am seeing here, because the president and the team do not have a very tangible evidence against Ford Foundation. This is a message that is targeting any other donor that is supporting governance in the country. It's not only Ford, even UK, even Denmark, and the individual donors, by the way. There are donors from Germany, there are donors from Switzerland, there are donors from Denmark, there are donors from Italy. There are donors all over, and a donor must not be a foundation. Even one person can be a donor. Yes, I once worked on a project that was being supported by a lady from Denmark. For 5 years, that lady was supporting a project. So, it is not a Ford Foundation But there is something hidden around about it, because this is the demand Kenya has given. From that letter, they are saying that how do you punish organizations that misuse your money? Why don't you blacklist? In fact, they are demanding the Ford Foundation to blacklist those NGOs and not to give them donor funding, because allegedly it is that money being used to fund and overthrow government. In fact, I don't want to be narrow-minded. The truth of the matter here is there are NGOs that are into the bad governance, are advancing good governance. And they are getting funding from Ford Foundation and other donors. But as to whether that money is directly, for example, John Allan Namu, Mulika Project. Mulika Project has been named there. That Mulika Project is supporting media. Now, do you want to tell me that an NGO is being given money, then that NGO will go to these streets here and start dishing 500 or 500 shilling notes or 1,000 shilling notes for people to turn out and go and vote, to go and protest? It's not true. It's actually untrue. And if you want to know, if you look at, I saw a response from Ole Sapit. There is a speech from Ole Sapit, a press briefing from Ole Sapit today, talking about this, and I wanted to listen to it because it gives you the stakeholder approach in it.
We as a church will monitor and report any progress that is made, and also demand that whatever has been committed should be implemented. We appeal to protesters to suspend protest and give government time to attend to the raft of demands, some of which the president has begun to address, firing most of his cabinet secretaries, signing of the IEBC Amendment Bill 2024 into law, and the resignation of the Inspector General of Police, among others. Now we ask that as he goes on to appoint a new team, he should look at merit, not any other thing that will be used for people to replace those who have been left out. The rule of law. We urge both the government and the protesters to uphold the law and avoid any action that may lead to chaos and cause further suffering of the people of Kenya. Let the police provide protesters with security and manage protests in a professional manner without resorting to use of live bullets or tear gassing peaceful protesters and arbitrary arrest. Genuine protests have been infiltrated by opportunists who have used the protest to cover as a cover to destroy properties, loot, and steal. Shutting down of businesses is not acceptable. Curtail movements and create fear or anarchy is unacceptable. This undesirable turn of events must not be given a chance. Destruction of property and looting must stop. Government must act swiftly and implement the raft of measures which are demanded by the protesters and the general public, including cutting government expenditure and wage bill, reducing the size of government and prioritizing essential services to ensure the capital flights and siphoning of public resources is stopped, to freeze both local and foreign accounts of all corruption suspects and cause audits and of such accounts, reigning in corruption, including at county levels, and reviving programs that will help lower the cost of living and spur growth in the economy. In view of these measures, the government must come up in the next 1 week with an implementation matrix of these demands and make it available for public scrutiny and monitoring. There is much talk about creating employment. We ask the President to lead his government to develop and implement a Marshall Plan to address what we are calling the 5E IBC Amendment Bill and Cabinet dissolution.
So even the church is talking. Do you also want to say the church has also been in this? Do you want to say that they are also getting donor funding? Even that Anglican church gets support from other donors to support their projects. Quite a number. Full gospel churches get support, chair under the chair program. Community health evangelism. So there's so many other donor-funded projects in the country that are also advancing good governance. But I think it's a blanket allegation against that Ford Foundation, and that's why that Ford Foundation has declined. For example, there is no way if you have a 5-year project, you will cut it because it's been budgeted and some of them have actually been paid in full. So the projects will have to continue. And I think the Kenya Kwanza are getting it wrong on this front, because some of these 16 years they are fighting are it's part of employment. It's part of the organizations that are providing employment to young people, to graduates. So if you want to stifle the civil society, who apart from advancing the good governance, the good governance on their end, they're also providing employment opportunities to Kenyans, then probably we are not just being sincere in this argument. And what I understand is the Ford Foundation is not going to stop. That's what they're saying. They're not going to stop any project with those organizations without a tangible evidence of misuse of that money, that money was not being used for intended purpose. And someone was asking, why did the PS write a letter? Why not Waziri? Why not the president himself? But there is something hidden. There is something hidden. The allegations against Ford Foundation is blanket. It doesn't have evidence. It's just hearsay. But the real intention of what Ruto wants to achieve with this blanket allegation is what I want us to look at. The first thing, I think Ruto wants to silence the civil society organizations that have been litigating against government policies and the government excesses. For example, if you, and just in the wake of these protests, there are families that are in court. Those whose children were killed by police, they're demanding justice. So government is going to face many cases in court, people demanding justice. Those whose children were shot, for example, look at that Rongai child, shot 8 times. Government is facing litigation. And for these litigations to continue, these victims need the civil society organizations to help them. And by that, that's where part of that money could be is going to. Those who are represented in court, they are getting, these organizations, some of these civil society organizations will help them get legal redress in their issues. So advancing this. And I think what government wants is to reduce those litigations. The government want to reduce the kind of the many cases that they will face in court by suppressing these organizations. Number two, I listened to some young people were speaking in Citizen TV, and I think it's also misadvice, but that's my personal opinion. Them saying it's not a bad idea. They said the next phase is to make sure that the Twitter battalion first registers as voters. Then they decentralize and ensure that it's not only the Twitter and the online battalion that will come on the street, also other people that are at home and in the rural setup also joined and own up the movement. And then they said, even if it will morph up into a political party that can be used, that can help provide the new breed of leaders, then it can be the way to go. So what Ruto understands is the Gen Z movement is the two things involved. It's been hijacked. There is allegations that it's been hijacked by other people who wants to advance the agenda. But that hijacking can also be used, it can also be hijacked and moving up into a political movement. So all this to happen, if they will go to the streets, if they will be going down to ask people to go and register, who is going to do that? They need funding. They need funding to hold public participation forums and capacity building and behavior change and creating awareness on the need to go for people to vote so that they participate in the next general election. And I think the president understands this, that the more Kenyans turn out to vote, the more the probability of him losing, is increasing. The higher the turnout, the higher the chances of Ruto having one term. Because the higher the turnout, then you will have the probability of having new voters. In fact, what Ruto would want is people turn out low so that the same number he might have controlled in the last general elections are the people that turn out and vote. But the new voters that will walk to that booth are most likely not to vote for President Ruto. So this is part of the internal machinery. I think this is intelligence-led to ensure that Ruto get his way with this. Number 3, the Ford Foundation also supports electoral body. And by the way, not just civil society organizations, there are also government projects, the programs that are being supported. So it's just, they just want to ensure that everything is knocked out so that the political activities goes down. And I think, lastly, I'm seeing this as part of the allegations and laying a strategy to shut some NGOs who have been suppressing government. If you look at the current debate, the government, the Kenya Kwanza, wants to absorb ODM, one of the largest opposition party in the country. If you absorb ODM and ODM makes that reckless decision of joining government, then you shall have killed opposition. We will remain with a shell of opposition under the Kalonzo and Karua and the Kioni team. That is what will remain. So what that means, or rather what will then happen, is the civil society will have to fill the gap of the opposition. So what Kenya Kwanza do not want is any opposition from the civil society organizations. And the strategy is to ensure that things are just move. And I'm saying that will be a wrong direction, because already we are seeing violation of human rights and we don't have an opposition. So if opposition is absorbed and then civil society is suppressed, I'm telling you, we are not heading in the right direction. That's my take. Thank you, guys.